All right, in this week's interview, we have the president of Richmond Raceway, the Dennis Bickmeier. If you guys remember, a couple weeks ago, we had a episode named The Dennis Bickmeier Show, just talking about him, hyping him up, but it's really good to finally get him on the podcast. Dennis, great to have you out.
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Hope I can deliver for you guys after that hype, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and just start with what got you involved in NASCAR and what steps led you to becoming president of Richmond Raceway.
So it's an interesting story, and I'll condense it pretty quickly here for time. But I've worked in sports my entire career. So from the time I got out of college, grad school actually in 1989. So I'm old. But I was working for the what was then the Anaheim Angels baseball team in Southern California, and Roger Penske built a brand new track. We know it today as Auto Club Speedway out in Fontana, and certainly they've made news here in the last few weeks as well with being reconfigured. But I was a friend of mine was the first public relations director there, and he called on some of his PR friends to just come out and volunteer to help him. I'd never been to a NASCAR race before, and it was June of 1997, first race ever there, and I went out to help a friend and was just blown away by it all. It was, racing attacks all the senses, and it just really grabbed me. And to that point in my career, I had worked a Super Bowl, a Major League Baseball All-Star game. I mean, I had worked big events. And to see the spectacle that this was, and to think about it too, NASCAR does this 36 times a year. So it's not just one weekend, I mean, the Daytona 500 is the biggest that we have, and certainly the championship weekend, like you'll see in Phoenix in a couple of weeks. But we do this 36 times a year, huge events. So it just really got me, and I continued to volunteer for him, and he got promoted within the Penske organization, and they brought me in as the PR director after him, and that kind of launched my motorsports career. I'm not a motorsports guy. I wasn't at that time. I am now. Certainly have the passion for it. But I just love the business of sports. To me, I feel like I can work in any sport because I love the business of sports. I like what this industry, what we do and how we do it. But I've been in motorsports, from California to Michigan as the vice president of sales and marketing, and then certainly here to Richmond, given this opportunity to lead this historic racetrack. So that's kind of the path in motorsports. But I've been in sports my entire career.
That's awesome. So just from following you over the years and interacting with you, a lot of people will say that you're the best president in NASCAR for track. And I've certainly seen it with people. I know, don't know if you remember this, but the 5K back in 2017, we're sitting there waiting, and a couple campers had unveiled a banner like Dennis Bickmeier, best president ever. Was there someone who was like a mentor to you that kind of instilled these practices that you continue to enact every year with just the fan engagement, all the different stuff that goes along with that, or what kind of instilled that practice in you?
Yeah, it's there are so many people. I mean, the list is long, and we'd fill up this podcast. And thank you. I appreciate our fans saying that. We've got some great track presidents, throughout this country that do what I do as well. And that fan engagement piece is so important. I mean, without you guys, without the fans, you can lock up the gates and we all go away. I mean, everything, you guys are the heart and soul of what we do. And we certainly experienced that a couple of weeks ago with not having fans here for the races. I mean, it's the oddest thing I've ever done in my career. And we missed that energy that the fans bring to our race events. But going back to your question, I mean, Roger Penske, I think first and foremost, everyone listening knows his impact on motorsports. But just to see him day to day, how he handles his business and how he puts customers first, and he does that with his car dealerships. He does that with Penske Truck Leasing. I mean, any of his companies, he puts the consumer first. And then a couple other people. I mean, I worked with Gillian Zucker at California. Gillian, she interacted with the fans really nonstop. She was the first one I saw who kind of set up her own email address to get fan feedback and focus groups. So, that, and then, and she's now with the Los Angeles Clippers, and Roger Curtis, who led Michigan, who took me from California to Michigan with him. And And again, just kind of seeing his interaction, you know, he would go out and visit people nonstop, you know, from the time that the campers moved in to the time that they moved out, he was with them. So I kind of take a little bit of, you know, pieces and parts from everyone that I worked with. And so much of it goes back to how they handle their day to day, you know, go to work attitude, and then certainly what they do to with the staff here to keep them motivated. And then certainly with our, I don't like calling them customers. I mean, they're fans, you know, they're really, you know, a big part of what we do.
So a couple weeks back, we spoke with Bob Pockras and asked them a question: what was the future of NASCAR? And so I want to ask you a similar question, but more specifically, what's the future of Richmond Raceway?
Yeah, I think you're seeing, you know, some of it here over the last couple of years where the facilities evolved a little bit with some modernization. You know, we're celebrating our 75th anniversary of being Richmond Raceway, or being a racetrack in this location. It's obviously had a couple of names and gone through a couple of reconfigurations as well. I tell everyone, you know, when I got here, you know, my job is to get it ready for the next 75 years. And I think you've seen a little bit of that, where we've been able to, you know, working with our corporate office to infuse some capital to update and modernize the facility a little bit. But there's a fine line there too. And, you know, being 75 years old, you still want to maintain some of that old school charm. You know, us, Darlington, Martinsville, the three oldest tracks in NASCAR, you still want to have kind of that old school feel as well. But certainly fans, what they want from an experience has changed and will continue to evolve, and you got to be able to address those needs. So again, your original question, what's the future? I think you'll continue to see some update and modernization of the facility. You know, the two NASCAR races have been staples here for a long time. Our job is to continue to do everything we can to continue to have two races. You saw a big shakeup of the schedule this year. So, you know, we'll do everything that we can. And certainly there's a lot that goes into those decisions as to where races get placed or moved around or changed. And, you know, we're one piece of that. We're not all the pieces. So I mean, I think those are the biggest things is as you look out, you know, I think we learned a lot during this pandemic of what a race weekend schedule will look like, you know, so there'll be, you know, we watched this no practice and show up and race. And I think, you know, you'll see some of that going forward as well. So we may have to adjust to that. If we are one of those races where there's no practice, we're going to have to do something else to keep you guys and keep the fans entertained. And those are the discussions that we're having right now.
So a couple years back, you Richmond Raceway as a whole did the whole reimagined deal, rebranded from Richmond International Raceway to Richmond Raceway, brought back the red stripes on the front backstretch on the walls, and undertook the massive rebranding of the infield with the garages and whatnot. What would you say is the most challenging part about that, whether it be the naming rights with DC Solar or just the construction process in general? What was the most difficult part about that project?
Well, I mean, the most difficult part about that project was actually seeing a big hole cut in the middle of the racetrack in turn one to put the new pedestrian tunnel in. It's kind of unnerving when you look out and you see a big hole in the racetrack, you know, and then you got to rely on the experts to get it put back together and make sure that it blends correctly. And fortunately, we've been very lucky in that regard. So I would say that's the biggest part. But you know, the other thing is the sales aspect of it. I mean, it's a $30 million project, and to get that kind of money, you got to commit to a return on investment. So we've got to show the company that, look, through sponsorship, through infield ticket sales, through concessions, whatever that may be, and using it on non-race weekends. So this is a busy facility here that we have. We got an amphitheater, we got couple 100,000 square feet of trade show space. So this is a busy facility, but trying to get more events to that infield. So, you know, really the pressure is on the return on investment piece as well. You know, the company made a big investment in us, and we got to do everything we can to make them, you know, to show them that it was worth that investment, and we got to get that return.
One thing I want to talk about too is you kind of already touched on it is what we're all having to deal with right now, COVID-19. How that's really impacted Richmond Raceway. You know, April race got taken away. You still had the playoff race and the second race of the round of 16. You are getting the two races in the 21 as of now, unless there's another schedule change. Hopefully not. But you know, how is that? How is day-to-day operations, race weekend? How was the race weekend? How is everything going about? Like, what have you had to change compared to like a normal weekend?
Yeah, so the September weekend, race two of the playoffs, as you guys have said, without fans, it was really difficult. First of all, it was great to have, you know, cars and in this case, trucks back on the track. And then to do 4 races in 3 days was really cool. We just wish that fans could have been here to enjoy it. It was great having the trucks back. I thought the doubleheader Xfinity Friday night, Saturday night was cool. I thought the racing was different. It played out different Friday than it did Saturday afternoon. And then to have 2 races on Saturday, I thought was an interesting twist as well. And I think more than anything, as you look at down the road, if schedules, again, get adjusted based on no practice, no qualifying, double headers, we showed that you could do it, based on getting one series in the infield, having them race, get out and get the other series in here. So operationally, I think things went great. But the challenges for this year, I mean, we're all living them daily. I mean, to have the April race go away was difficult, but for all the right reasons. Obviously, that was kind of at the beginning of all this. When we think back, with the sport shutting down in March, and then when we came back to racing, we had to shuffle the deck and get to racetracks where we could race. So our race got shifted over to Darlington. But I will tell you, I give our sport, just really, really high praise to think that we're actually on schedule. I mean, to be shut down for 2 months, to get back to racing, to do it in a very smart, methodical way, to slowly introduce fans back where we could. I mean, I think this will be a tremendous case study, on how NASCAR was able to accomplish this. And to think when we got to Daytona in August, that was the regular season finale, and it ran on the day it was supposed to run. I mean, that is an incredible accomplishment for this industry. And you can't do it without A, good leadership, but B, everybody pulling together. The race teams, the NASCAR officials, the team ownership, the racetracks, the communities where we race, all those things really came together to make this work. And now we got to get through the next 4 weeks and we'll crown a champion here in about a month.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. And I always came to your track since I was really young. So walking out on my front porch and being able to hear cars just hurt because I'm usually in the stands watching all of it. But IndyCar was supposed to come to Richmond this year and make their return, and they weren't able to because of COVID-19. The schedule is released that IndyCar isn't returning. Is IndyCar going to be able to make a return to Richmond at some point?
Well, it remains to be seen. Like us, on the NASCAR side, they've gone through a lot of changes. And I mentioned Roger's name a few times here, but Mr. Penske buying that series, buying IMS. So they've got a lot of things that they're doing through this reorg and trying to get their legs under them as well as they move on to the future. So a couple of things. First, it was difficult not to be able to have that race as well. When we had them on the schedule, there were a lot of people excited about that, especially to be their only race up and down the Mid-Atlantic as well. It was important to them, certainly from a series standpoint. And then when that race wasn't able to happen because of the pandemic, and then with so many changes going on there, so many changes going on our side, we just couldn't get to a point where we could get something scheduled for 2021. And you never say never. I just don't know, kind of where they're going to be in a couple years or where we're going to be in a couple years. I don't think you ever close the door on opportunities to talk to other series to diversify the racing. But right now our focus is squarely on our 2 NASCAR races for 2021.
All right, Dennis. Well, I appreciate your time today. And every week on the podcast, we finish it off by doing a hot take and a dark horse for the upcoming weekend. And we've gotten everyone that we've interviewed so far to weigh in on who they think will be a dark horse for the championship race, along with a hot take for the remainder of the season. So I'd love to hear what you're thinking.
Well, when you're down to 8, there really aren't any dark horses here now, because 8 goes to 4, and you're one of the 8 because you're really good. So, there are some guys that have a little bit of a hill to climb. I think that, the Keselowski and Logano, I think they got to come out of the gate strong here in Kansas, and not get further behind the 8 ball, really. So, I mean, let's Harvick and Hamlin are just the years that they've had are phenomenal. So I think, so many people have them penciled in to the next 2 spots. I think Chase Elliott moves into this round with some momentum coming off the Roval win. So I think for me, I'm kind of keeping my eyes on the 2 Penske guys, on Brad and Joey. And if they stumble in Kansas, it might be tough to get to that championship 4 in Phoenix. But look, I like the field. I think it's, again, you're one of the 8 for a reason. But man, Harvick and Hamlin, they've made it tough for 6 other drivers in some respects to get in there. Now, one last quick thing though. Harvick did not have the round 2 that I think anyone expected Harvick to have. So you guys are all shaking your head, and so now you got to start thinking, is there a little bit of doubt amongst that team as to kind of where they are? The good thing is they racked up so many wins and bonus points and on and on and on, that's helped them. But it'll be an interesting storyline to watch, just because they didn't have a good round 2. So I'm not trying to skirt your answer. I just think it's tough to pick a dark horse out of these 8 for sure.
All right. Well, Dennis, I really appreciate you coming out to speak with us, and we wish you luck up in the next year with you got your 2 dates, and we really hope they go well, and hopefully we'll have a packed house, another sold-out race at Richmond Raceway. But I appreciate you coming out, and we'll hope to speak to you soon.
Yeah, anytime, guys. You know how to find me. So anything that's happening in the sport and you need a quick comment or something, don't hesitate to reach out. But appreciate you guys thinking of me. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.